More and more executives nowadays are turning to video podcasting, not just to share their expertise, but because it creates reusable content. One recording can turn into dozens of LinkedIn posts, internal training clips, even recruitment assets. It's not just a podcast, it's an engine for attention. Welcome back, everyone. In our last session, Vuk talked about why corporate clients are such a powerful growth lever for your studio. And if you missed that, I really encourage you to go back and watch it. It'll help this episode that I'm going to talk about now make even more sense. I also talked about managing your pipeline, also a very important piece of the puzzle, which you should go through. But today, I'm going to move from the why, which we covered previously, to the how. Specifically, how do you actually sell to corporate clients? Because let's be honest, selling to corporates is not like selling to individuals and individual content creators or small businesses. It's a completely different game. And if you try to play it the same way, you'll almost always lose to someone that's ready to up the game and sell specifically to corporate clients. So I've spent 2 decades in corporate sales roles, and one of my favorite and probably the most widely used sales framework is the Challenger framework. I was a certified Challenger coach, and I spent years refining my approach to Challenger sales. So I'll break it down for you in the next few minutes, instead of you needing to go through hours of training like I have. Although I recommend, if you like the Challenger sales framework, to go to YouTube and learn a bit more about this. So in Challenger sales, there are 3 key steps, and I will focus today on teach, tailor, and take control. But I also overlay the framework with some insights and an update to the framework that's making it more relevant to our industry. So let me first start with offering some insights and breaking the old approach of how many of you probably are selling now, because I've talking to some studio owners, I can see still that there's a bit of selling like that. So here's the mistake that I see in most studio approaches when it comes to selling. The approach to corporates is the same way that you would use to approach a podcaster or a startup or a small business. You start by giving them a tour. You talk about cameras, about lights. You talk about your lounge area, the bar. And there's, nothing wrong with that. Those things are great. But corporates don't really care about your gear, at least not at the very beginning. So what corporates do care about is, what business outcome does this solve for me? And that's where most people get stuck. If you lead with equipment, you're already speaking the wrong language, given you're talking to head of corporate comms or chief of staff or someone else in the corporate. So that's the first thing that I'd like to overlay before we go into the 3 T's. So the first T, teach. You need to reframe the value conversation leveraging on the Challenger thinking. So what should you do instead? You lead with insight. Imagine that you're sitting down with corporate communications director, and instead of saying, hey, we've got 4K cameras and these great lights and great microphones, you would say, more and more executives nowadays are turning to video podcasting, not just to share their expertise, but because it creates reusable content. One recording can turn into dozens of LinkedIn posts, internal training clips, even recruitment assets. It's not just a podcast, it's an engine for attention. When you teach them something that they didn't fully see before, you immediately elevate yourself. You build the authority in the space, and you're no longer just a vendor with the space and cameras. You are an advisor who brings business value to the table. The second one is tailor. Make it relevant to their world. The second step is really important because corporates don't want generic pitches. They want to feel like you understand their world, That's where agencies get it right, especially those that are tailored for specific industries. If you're talking to a financial services company, your angle might be about trust, compliance, and showing the thought leadership in a credible way. If it's a tech startup, highlight speed, innovation, and attracting top talent through fresh and authentic content. If it's a lifestyle brand, maybe it's about storytelling, culture, and connecting emotionally with the audiences. Authentic content, emotionally relevant, resonates with these audiences and will trigger a light bulb in your potential client's head. The key is that you speak their business language, not just your studio language. Your corporate clients will appreciate this. The third one is take control, a bit of a modernized approach, and I'll explain why. Corporate sales cycles are and can be very slow. You've got layers of decision makers, procurement, processes, budget approvals, and if you're not careful, the deal drags for months and eventually disappears. What happens is you invest time, you build proposals, you send decks, you talk to them on multiple calls, and because you are not in control of this deal and something else happens that's not in your control, they deprioritize the project, or it's been too long, so your budget's gone. There are different reasons why projects fail, but the best way to handle this is to take control yourself, not in a pushy way, but in a guiding way. For example, at the end of every meeting, clearly outline the next steps. We're going to follow up with the notes. We're going to ask for maybe a next date for the follow-up meeting. And you're going to constantly be aligned with your client throughout that journey. Create a simple framework that shows that you've been thinking through the whole thing, that you know the path. Drive a discovery call, ideation session, send a proposal. Pilot maybe a recording, which they can use to position to their executives as a proof of execution or proof of something that needs to be done, and then roll out the whole thing. Keep momentum by regularly sending follow-ups and being on top of things. If you wait for the client to drive the process, you'll drown in red tape, and you probably might even get so lost in their corporate bureaucracy that the client just gives up because it's been months and nothing has happened. If you guide them, they'll appreciate the clarity, and it's easier for your stakeholder to sell the value internally and secure the budget. A bit of an update for digital first selling world, because we are in a digital selling space. Our content is digital, our product is digital. So here's what's different today compared to last few decades since this methodology has been created. Buyers already are educated before they even talk to you. In one of our previous sessions, I've talked about 84% of the buying decision-making is done before the client even gets in touch with you. And this is really an important fact. By the time a corporate prospect reaches you, they've probably Googled you, checked your LinkedIn, maybe even watched your content, they've seen your website, and if all they see on your website is a booking button and a blank page which explains your services and the gear you have in the studio, you're just another studio to them. But if they see that you're sharing insights about the industry, posting content on LinkedIn, maybe highlighting a case study of how other executives are using podcasting strategically, maybe not in your studio, maybe somewhere else. But as long as they see that you're tailoring the communication for them, they walk into the first meeting already seeing you as a trusted expert or someone that has credibility and authority in the industry. That's the power of digital presence today. And it's playing a really important role in the sales cycle. So by the time they come to you, they should already be like, these guys are legit. We've looked at 10 different guys, and you are the ones that we've picked amongst the other maybe 3 to talk to you because you have a relevant service. So we put so much emphasis on how our web pages are designed at Poddster, and we invest a lot of effort into our booking flow And it really makes a big difference when the clients are researching us, because they come and they're like, we've seen your websites and they're really impressive and we know what you've been doing with other clients. I actually got a response message from a LinkedIn contact that was clearly a wrong target for the campaign, because he said, listen, I'm not your guy. I will introduce you to a person who runs content in our company, but I got to tell you, I love your website. I've spent 10 minutes browsing through and reading, and it's so slick, and I really love what you guys are doing. And that speaks volume, because the client took, and he's not even a potential client. He's not interested in the service, but he was like, I had to read through because it was interesting for me to see what you guys are doing. That's what you got to do with your clients. They got to stick and read through, and then when they come to you, they're already pre-sold to the idea. Let me give you a practical scenario. So you're pitching to a mid-size tech company. Instead of opening with, we have the best cameras in town, you open with, we are, your executives probably spend hours each week in meetings where great ideas are being shared and then lost. What if you could capture those ideas once and turn them into content that positions your brand as a thought leader in the tech space? Now you reframe the value. The conversation isn't about studio rental anymore. It's about thought leadership, content leverage, and brand positioning. That's what gets corporates leaning in. Now you might ask, like, hey, I'm becoming an agency if I start doing this, like I don't have the manpower. Yes and no. So it takes a bit of effort, some scripting using GPT or, carefully designed website, a bit of a, production on the thought leadership side or industry relevant content. And if you pick one industry and focus on that industry that's big in your city, or just an industry that you want to focus on as a first pilot, I guarantee with a bit of effort, you'll be able to land a few clients and then you'll start a snowball rolling. So in closing, let me summarize. You have the 3 T's of the Challenger framework: teach, tailor, and take control. When you overlay with having the right insights for the particular industry you're talking to and the right role you're addressing, and you're able to start the journey way before the client comes to you, your website, your online presence. If you haven't done that already, watch the marketing section where Vuk and I were talking about how to amp up your marketing game, how to amp up your website, how to make sure that assets you produce are world-class. That's going to get the client already 1 foot through the door before they come to you. So if you do this correctly, I guarantee you'll have more corporate sales. So good luck to you.